Now, okay, here I am. All right, let's start with something that's not related here. This, you see those? Can you see those two flowers? Somebody?
Yes.
Okay, Amy can be my spokesman. She's still. Yeah, well, those are both gelsemiums. The one on the right is Gelsemium sempervirens, which is a common one. And the one on the left is Gelsemium rankini, which is swamp jasmine. This is the top right one is the state flower of South Carolina. They both have strychnine in them, so they're poisonous. And lots of folks can't tell them apart. And for the second time in my life yesterday, I saw the one on the left. But the one on the left is all over the Savannah-Geechee Canal Nature Center, and this one is in the minority, which is unusual. But I'm testing a hypothesis, and the hypothesis is that you'll find the rare one here on the left when you find in the cypress swamp, and that seems to be true. Timothy Estep, the vice president of the society, and myself saw this one yesterday over in the Solomon Tract, which is a small portion of the Savannah National Wildlife Refuge. But the reason I'm showing you this, you're reading Weekly's Key and it says sepals acuminate. And then it's over here, it'll say, for the other one, it'll say sepals acute to obtuse. Well, first of all, you got to know that acuminate means tapered, and that's what this is. But the question always comes up, unless you have the other one, and you never do. You rarely have the other. I mean, to find these in the same spot, that was unusual. But the bottom line is that once you see both of them side by side, how acute is acute, how acuminate is acuminate, gets answered. Because the one on the left is clearly acuminate, the one on the right is clearly acute. But another thing you can't tell really is this one is lemon yellow, this one is orange yellow, the left one. And I got so good at my color distinctions, I could tell yesterday when we saw it that I saw the rare one. So until you have them side by side though, and the picture doesn't do color justice. This one is orange, golden yellow, like Weekly says in the key, and this one is lemon yellow. And this one is supposed to be inodorous or very rarely odorous. And yesterday, Timothy smelled it. This one is always fragrant, except when the corolla falls off, which is, this one keeps its sepals in fruit. This one loses its sepals in fruit. Let's see, what are the difference? This one has winged seeds and this one does not. So anyway, that was an interesting little exercise. Let's see, the other stuff I'm going to talk. Okay, this is the other. I've spoke about these 3 books. Can everybody read them or see them? I've got 4 things listed here. And plant identification terminology is the one by Harris and Harris. And I forgot to put in that, put that information in the Harris and Harris. That is a must for plant identification. It's highly recommend. I highly recommend it. This other one Donna has, I don't know how many of the others of you have it. Dictionary of Botany. It's about 1980. Little and Jones, best ever dictionary of botany in the broad sense. By that I mean it also includes mycology, which is fungi, and so when I use botany in the broad sense, I mean the old sense where it covered a lot of, the scope of botany was very broad. Now the scope of botany is pretty narrow. Everybody's we're in the age of specialists, okay? This other one we talked about, Dictionary of Root Words and Combining Forms, is, Steve, don't say anything, but we found it accidentally so that it was available online in a PDF form, but you can buy it, but I think that the PDF one, the PDF may be illegal. But anyway, that's a timeless little book that gives, if you see the word procumbens and don't know what that means, well, that'll help you with that. So, and this last one is a book I had, still have. Actually, I had 2 of them and I got rid of one, kept one. It was what I used before the #1 came out, before Harris came out. And I was looking through it today. It's got some interesting things like how to press and press plants and curate them. And it's got a longest, most detailed section on how to use dichotomous keys of anything I've ever seen. Really good. And and you can still get it, I think, used for probably $6 or $7. I think you can. But anyway, those are references that are mentioned. All right, let's get started. These other things I'll talk about as we get through. Let me get this out of there. All right. Now, all right, here we go. Oh, let me do that annotate thing. Where's that little spotlight? All right, see how this goes. All right. Now, before I forget it, I'll at the end, I hope to remember to say it, but just in case, we'll do plant physiology. We'll start plant physiology next time, and we'll try to stay regular. We stalled a little. I was talking about that before everybody came on, but we stalled a little bit on partly because what Kevin said about other people in the society would profit from this, and I'm reluctant to beat my own drum. And he says I'm selling myself short, and maybe I am, but and Donna said, why don't I do an email blast that tells everybody what we're doing? But it sounds like I'm begging for people to come, and I'm really not. I like the small group, but I do think well, I told Donna, I said, there's other people in this society that aren't in this part of this little program that they just don't know what they don't know. I hate to sound like that, but that's the truth is that they don't know what they're missing. And I can't say that too wide because it looks like I'm, beating my own drum. But anyhow, so, but the short answer on the plant physiology will take 2, maybe 3 sessions. And it used to not be my favorite. I've come to like it because when you teach it, you kind of really learn it. It's always, even though I minored in chemistry and biology major, I thought chemistry was difficult for me. A lot of it has to do with having a good teacher, or not. But now we finished up talking about morphology and anatomy for vegetative structures, and then we most recently dealt with that topic for reproductive structures, like the flower and the fruit and the cone. And there are some other ways to look at form and structure, and this is what we're going to do in the next half hour or so. Why, the question I ask you is why, and this is rhetorical, I don't expect anybody to answer. Why has it been impractical to classify plants according to the habit? Now, habit is the way something looks, it's lifestyle, and not habitat, which is where something grows. In other words, why don't we classify plants according to whether they're trees, shrubs, or herbs, or even graminoids, or forbs? Does anybody know what the term forb is? F-O-R-B. Forb is a term that range ecologists use for broadleaf angiosperms, not graminoids, not grass-like relatives, not Graminoids usually refers to grasses and sedges and rushes. And forbs is a broadleaf angiosperm. Could be a monocot, but anyway, why don't we use those terms to classify this? Because you might, a lot of it has to do with where the members of the family grow. Everybody in our temperate zone flora knows that the violet is an herb. But in the tropics, there are members of the violet family that are trees.
Oh.
Not many of them, but there's a few. And then in the Rubiaceae, one of my favorite families, the madder family, M-A-D-D-E-R, we've got bluets and things like that are herbs. But as you go to South Florida, and actually we do have what is it? Oh gosh. Cephalanthus occidentalis buttonbush, that's in a small shrubby thing or tree-like, well, more shrub in wetlands. And we have in South Georgia, the fever bark, the Picnea. But the further you go toward in Florida or toward the tropics, the more you get woody members of the family. I kind of call it woody gigantism, but that's what happens. So that has a lot to do with why we don't classify things that way. We classify things in a system we try to say is evolutionary. So, or at least phylogenetic, which means about the same thing. But according to its relationship, that's taxonomic. Now, let's see. Oh, it's not working. I'm going to have to do now. Okay, now I think it'll work. Okay, there's a trick to making that little thing. Once you put that little red dot on, sometimes the down arrow doesn't work until you click on the mouse pad, and I finally learned that. All right, annual, biennial, or perennial. Now, I did send a handout along with the slide set that we'll talk about in a minute as we get toward the end of this topic. All right, now we're going to, let's see. If your plant has a rhizome and you don't recognize this, that could be a problem, and I'm going to try to clear that up. In fact, this little schematic on the bottom left has that, but we'll that now. As I'll mention, okay, there goes woody. We could talk about habit as the woody, herbaceous, or a liana. A liana is a woody vine, okay? So habit can mean a lot of things. And this slide came from Lyman Benson's 1979 book, and it's got I recognized recently that it's got a minor problem, and it has to do with, if you look up the definition of arborescent in Harris and you look it up in Dictionary of Botany, it's different, but arborescent in the Harris says a tree-like, it says tree-like. But for arboreous, tree over here, they say, they tell you to see arborescent. as if they're the same. But Dictionary of Plants, which is a dictionary that's not just devoted to identification, it's broader and has more ecology and stuff in it, in mycology. The arborescent definition is of tree-like habit, in semicolon, resembling a tree in growth or appearance. But now fruticose is, I think it's probably Latin for shrub, and that no problems with that, but most people don't use the word fruticose, although there are some shrubs that have that as their epithet, like Sebastiana fruticosa, now called Didyrrhizina fruticosa, which is Sebastian bush in the euphorbia family. But anyway, I wouldn't worry a lot about trying to, I would kind of consider these the same. The question is arborescent here. When you define a tree, the old definitions of tree would be a woody plant that has one main trunk and is taller than 15 feet or taller. Now, the 15 feet business goes out the window, in my opinion. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But the multiple trunk is something we associate with shrubs, main trunk with a tree. Now, yesterday, Timothy and I on the Solomon Tract in Nearport Wentworth, part of the Savannah National Wildlife Refuge, saw a lot of Ilex decidua, which is possum haw is one name for it, but that's confusing with haw, with a true haw, and it's not. Excuse me, but in the holly family, except for American holly, is full of species of Ilex holly that are borderline shrubs and trees. And so anyway, it's not always clear. Now, this is a good set of fairly good set of definitions. Let's see. Plant with an annual above ground parts. That's herbaceous. Now, there can be vines that are herbaceous too, but if the vine is woody, we tend to call it a liana or a liane, ending with Liane. But vines can be herbaceous. That would be weak stem / herbaceous. Shrubs, woody, multiple stems from the base, and again, that I don't put a lot of stock in this arbitrary 15 feet thing, and we'll talk about that when I give you a good example of why it's not good. Sub-shrub, there's that sensitivity thing. Sub-shrub, sub means below or beneath or just about. So, and actually, when I see the sub-shrub, I think of the word that I don't have anywhere written here. Thought I did. But, well, we're going to see a good example of it in a minute, but I guess I'm going to go ahead and spell it. Gosh. All right, I'm going to try to spell it here. Suffrutescent. Anybody ever heard it? Okay. Suffrescent. I don't think I spelled it right. Let me write it down. Hang on. I don't think I got that. I had it written. All right, SUFF, RU. Well, shoot. Let me look it up. All right. It's a 50. Well, I call it a 50-cent word. That means one you don't use much. This is a 3-cup coffee day. This is my 3rd cup. I usually have 2. Spelling used to be pretty good, but gosh, I'm looking in dictionary botany. Okay, good. I should have phonetically got it by saying it. I would have got it. SUFFRUTESCENT. SUFFRUTESCENT. A perennial plant has slightly woody at the base. Woody at the base is what you need to remember, and that's where we start running into the sub-shrub idea. And then, of course, trees, arborescent, woody one trunk, conflicts with, I already talked about that arborescent conflict on the preceding slide. That 15 feet thing fails, but we'll get into that in a second. Now, these are hypothetical species, not drawn to scale, but it illustrates. Well, that's okay. Go ahead. Now, this plant. Anybody know what that plant is? Most of you probably don't, unless you live down in the coast south of the fall line. Now, I assume everybody knows what the fall line is. It's imaginary it's a geological line that separates, if you go from Augusta to Columbus, basically, and below it's the coastal plain, above it's the Piedmont. Well, this plant is more down here, and I don't think it even gets above the fall line, or not. If it does, not very much. And actually, I think it only occurs in South Carolina in one spot, and I think I saw that not a few years ago. In fact, the point is, this is gopher apple, Licania michawii. It's the only member of its family in our flora, and it gets about 2 feet tall. It looks kind of like an oak when you first see it, but it's a good example of it's woody at the base. It's actually a woody above the base a little bit. So it's a kind of a sub-shrub that doesn't quite fully fit the definition of Suffrutescent because it's woody up above. But the real big point is the main stem of this thing is below the ground, has a rhizome from our earlier discussion, is a horizontal stem. Well, not always. In ferns, it can be vertical. A subterranean, usually horizontal stem that has a function of either storage and or reproduction. You can see that you got 4 plants from this one horizontal stem. Now, I dug one of these up one time to put it in my yard because the reason I dug it up, it was on a roadside right of way that was getting ripped up. And so it's kind of a rescue. So I dug for probably an hour till I got this stem that was probably 4 or 5 inches in diameter out of the ground. And then I drug it all the way, or dragged it, I guess, all the way to Pembroke, Georgia, and planted it in my yard, and the sucker died. So it died anyway. It just didn't like my yard. But looking at this kind of sandy ground it's growing in, and by the way, that this fall line is where sometimes called the gnat line, G-N-A-T, because Donna was right on the border of that and Macon. But the sandy soil promotes the life cycle of gnats, they say, and that's below the fall line. And that's, I see in this sand made me think about that fact. I forgot to mention that. Not that you needed to know that, I guess. But anyhow, all right. So so it's a neat little plant, by the way, and it does have fruit that the gopher tortoise would really like. In fact, I've tried them; they're not bad. But again, a lion is a woody vine. Those are two different. I mean the same thing. And then shrub and then tree. Any questions? All right, we're gonna spend most of the rest of the time talking about annuals, perennials, and biennials and perennials. Let's see. All right, I think I pretty much. And actually, one other thing. Thinking about this, I've got in my yard bracken fern.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, you say sorry, Donna?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind that it just kind of goes over. You can never tell where it's going to come up. I don't really care, and I like it because I like ferns. And the trouble is, what you see is the leaf, and if you're going to see the stem or rhizome, you have to dig about 6 inches to a foot down.
Whoa.
To find it. And so I painstakingly dug some up out of the woods and brought it in about 4 or 5 years ago. Now it's just, you never know where it's going to come up, maybe 10 feet away. But anyway, I like it. And it's a fern that tolerates sun. And you hardly can ever identify it by the book because it seldom produces spores, but just have to recognize it on sight. But anyway, it's got the above ground portion. People say, oh, that's the stem. No, that's the petiole. Anyway, so that it doesn't look like this, by the way. That looks like a resurrection fern type thing. But all right, let's go on. You know what? Let's see if I can minimize this because that gets in. Okay, good. That'll go better on the video, on the recording thing, because I don't see myself, which is okay. Anyhow, let's see. Oh, I guess that, okay. This other examples of plant habit, that was the final click. The term habit, again, is lifestyle, and habitat is where something grows, but there are some so-called habits that get real close to interfacing with the concept of habitat. Give you an example. Spanish moss is an epiphyte. And so you could say that plant has an epiphytic habit lifestyle. And I think I've said this before, but in case I haven't, people thought it's a parasite. But, well, that's true. If that's true, then why does it live on power lines? It's not a parasite. It's an epiphyte, and it has damaged my pecan trees, but not because it parasitizes them. It's because it shades the buds, and that's part of the problem. And it also adds weight to already brittle limbs when they get wet. So it does do harm, but it's not a parasite. It does do harm to some things. I've got it in my live oaks, and which are producing. I just got on the roof of my house and blew these catkins away. These little male tassels or catkins are immense, and there's my yard is about a 1/2 inch deep with them. I've got these 4 big live oaks that do it. But back to the point here, epiphyte. If I said habit is where the lifestyle, when you say something is an epiphyte, it's growing on something. Epi means on. Well, at that point, habit becomes real close to habitat. You see, that's one of the few times I can say that, but because not only are you describing lifestyle, you're describing where it grows. Okay, and of course, a saprophyte is a plant that relies on decaying matter, and there are a few angiosperms like that. There's some angiosperms that are parasites too. So habit can be used a lot of ways: parasitic habit, saprophytic habit, free living, woody, herbaceous lifestyle. And so it's a rather broad concept that's useful sometimes. Now, one of my favorite topics is to try to still dealing with that arborescent versus shrub idea. And what I've come to decide is when you're trying to deal with it, I just say woody plants versus herbaceous plants and quit worrying about shrub and trees. All right, on the left, we have a cabbage palm, which is the state tree of South Carolina and that's probably economic reasons, tourism. But then Florida, by rights, could very well have it as a state tree and does. So 2 states have it as a state tree. And you got these persistent petiolar bases, sometimes called boots, BOOTS. And in South Florida, you'd find hand fern growing on that, which is a rare plant. If the boots fall off, the hand fern may not do well, but anyhow, it may die. But the boots may or may not be there. But the point is, comparing this plant, these 2 plants are 2 of the 4 of the native palms in Georgia, and all 4 of those, well, actually, saw palmetto is the other one, and needle palm is the rare one. But all 4 of those are at the Savannah Geechee Canal. And that's one of the reasons I like that place. It's so loaded with stuff. But, and it's shaded too. But this I saw at the canal, there's thousands of these. And I saw hundreds of these yesterday, maybe thousands if I'd looked far enough at the refuge of the Solomon Tract. Sabal minor, it actually, I think up around Macon, you still have it, and further, maybe a little north, but it's a shrubby, in terms of stature, a shrubby member of the genus Sabal. Minor kind of hinting about dwarf, and it is. Also called blue palmetto, because it has a bluish cast as opposed to a yellowish green cast. You see that in full sunlight. There are other ways to tell them, but here's the thing. The question would be, when you saw one of these Sabal minors, how would you know if you're on the coast, which is where the cabbage palm tree grows, how would you know it wouldn't be a juvenile cabbage palm? And the answer would be, and I don't rest my life on it until I see this flower stalk, or my career on it, be better, until I see a flower stalk coming out of the ground. If I see a flower stalk coming out of the ground, and when the trunk is not out of the ground, and the trunk rarely comes out of the ground on this species, then I know it's Sabal minor, not a baby cabbage palm. Of course, if you're away from the coast, this cabbage palm, unless it's been planted, ain't going to be growing anyway, because it hangs on the coast, and whereas this grows inland, and it likes shade too. I've got about 8 of them in my yard, and it's already reproducing. And but anyway, I also have needle palm that if you want to find needle palm, you usually find these first, and they'll be like 100 to 1 ratio, 100 of these to 1 or 2 needle palms. I only found, of the thousands of these at the canal, I only found 5 needle palms. And I thought there were 4, but I finally found the 5th one. But anyway, the point I'm making is, if something flowers, well, that's one point about how to tell these apart, but The real thing is if something flowers as a shrub, it must be a what? Shrub. Okay, and that brings us to this thing, this slide. This is in my front yard. There's my old fence, 80 or 100 years old, and there's the male flowers on this oak tree, not tree or shrub, Quercus pumila. It's also called Quercus ellioti, and maybe ellioti has a current name, but I still call it pumila. Pumila means small, and that fits nicely. Runner oak, and then about 7 miles from me, and I've planted that in my yard too, but about 7 miles from me, you find dwarf live oak, which is that's a clone of it, pretty much a clone. Mostly a clone, having been derived asexually. See, these start coming up, and you can tell that it looks like a live oak. If you start tugging on it a little bit, it'll come up a little bit, where a live oak tree won't do that. You can't get any. You tug on that, it'll come up easy, and you can destroy the plant if you're not careful. I think I pressed this one, or maybe I planted it in my yard. But anyway, I know I got this in my yard. I think I still have some of this, but in fact, I'm making a hedgerow of it in my fence. That old fence I'm trying to hide with. In fact, now if you look at it, it's got shrubby oaks running all across here, trying to hide the old rusty pipes. But anyhow, seeing this. By the way, these are the male flowers. There's probably 50 per tassel or catkin, maybe or more in that. And this is the acorn that's produced by the female. That's the fruit of the female flower, which is very inconspicuous. You find it's you almost have to have a hand lens to find the young ones. There's a stigma style complex still on the acorn. But the bottom line is, it's monoecious. You have male and female parts on different branches of this. And that might be a young acorn, but I can't tell. But anyway, here, back to the thing again. How do we know this little plant is not going to eventually be a tree? Well, it's already flowering as a shrub, so we can clearly define it as a shrub, okay? All right, so not hearing anything. I hope everybody's still there.
If it walks like a duck.
What's that, Donna?
If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck.
Duck, and that's a good analogy. That's right. But anyway, there are, I've got myrtle oak in my yard too, and that's the most abundant one, and it's rare in South Georgia. In fact, if you're going to go to the big hammock on June the 6th, I think it is, the Sunday, with me, we're going to see myrtle oak, and it just doesn't get higher than about 15 feet. I'm a sucker for evergreens. By the way, this one here is evergreen. This one over here is deciduous. It even looks deciduous. The leaves are brand new, and these are old leaves at the end of the season. All right, now for the annual, biennial, and perennial terms. I'm not going to sit there and go through every item on it, but that handout I sent you that has it's called Table 30-1, terms used to describe the life histories of plants. That's one of the few handouts I gave you that was separate from the slide, and it's got a good set of definitions there, and down at the bottom, monocarpic and polycarpic, you don't use them very often, but a polycarpic as an adjective is a plant that flowers more than one season, but basically a perennial. May flower in the first year or not for many years, for example, many trees and shrubs. Well, as it up above, you can see there's herbaceous perennials too. Goldenrods, some of them, or most of them are good examples of herbaceous perennials, especially that seaside goldenrod. All right, now an annual flowers in the first season and overwinters as seeds. So there's an old saying about annuals have perennial seeds and perennials have annual seeds. Basically, annuals can have long-lasting seeds, and I think that's generally a rule that works, whereas some of the perennials may not. I hope I've got that right, but there's an adage about it somewhere. And but and there's an interesting, speaking of annuals, BOERHAVIA repens, Bohevia repens in the morning, in the 4 o'clock family, is a Saharan desert plant. It's an annual. It can germinate, grow, produce flowers, and ripen the seeds in the space of 10 days after it has been rained on, seed to seed. So that an annual lifestyle is sometimes a way of avoiding adverse conditions. In a desert habitat, you're going to have adverse conditions most of the year. I've never gone to the Sonoran Desert when it's at its peak. Usually sometime February, March, you get some late winter rains, and you get this flurry of the desert in bloom just as far as you can see of different things. But of course, this plant I'm talking about, Bohevia, BOERHAVIA repens, is from the Saharan Desert, but the concept's the same, except it's an extreme example, because to live your whole life cycle in 10 days is pretty, it's like an insect. So makes me think of some insects. But seed to seed in 10 days. And so annuals can really, in fact, in the desert, 40% of the flowers are annuals, both winter, spring, and summer annuals, versus 13% for all other non-desert biomes or plant formations. So the general rule on the other plant formations is 13% of the flora will be annuals, and I suspect in tropical rainforests there wouldn't be many annuals because they tend to be woody perennials. But the desert, the majority, well, not the majority, but a tremendous amount of the desert flora is 40% are annuals, and that's winter, spring, and summer annuals both. Now, a biennial is, let's see. Yeah, let's deal with it here. A biennial often has, it flowers in the second year. And if not always, but in the first season, you often have a rosette. The mustard family is notorious for being biennials. A lot of them are biennials. They'll have a rosette, and then you'll have bolting of this in the second season. And if you look around, you may find a mixture of first year and second year plants in a given population. But so it takes 2 years to reach that reproductive age in a biennial, and it dies after the second growing season, after the second seed set. A perennial, a perennial this is showing a hypothetical species in its 5th year. But a perennial lives on beyond the second year, third or 3 or more years. And they can be herbaceous perennials, as that handout indicates, or they can be woody perennials. And they both would be considered polycarpic, mini fruit. Now, you can't always tell about stuff like that. Castor bean, some people plant it around here, but as an ornamental, very poisonous. I think 3 of them will kill a child and 5 of them will kill an adult. But in fact, ricin comes from it, that powder that in Bosnia, when I was in the Army, one of my jobs was constantly looking at the salt shakers to make sure they had salt in there instead of the Saudi Arabians that supported the Bosniaks didn't try to kill us. But the reason I'm mentioning this plant is technically an annual, but in the mild winter or climate of Southern California, it can reach a height of 30 feet and have a trunk diameter of up to a foot, 10 inches to a foot. And it's, but it's normally considered an annual. The base can be solid and have an oily wood, and but I wouldn't burn that thing indoors. It'd be pretty dangerous. But all right, so I'm done. Now, let's come back over to the audio and make sure there's no questions. Let's see if I can bring people back. Well, I got Donna here. Where am I? I'll bring everybody back. Okay, good. Okay. All right. So I actually never knew I had a grid video, but let's pull this down and pull this in.
Dictionary of words and forms.
Okay. Do we have any questions? I actually got it done in less than an hour, but I told you it was going to be short, but I've got a few concepts that we'll talk about that'll take up the rest of the time. So I'm assuming there's no questions on this.
Check your chat window, Bobby.
What's that?
Check the chat window. There were a couple of comments that came in on the chat
Okay, all
window.
right, chat window. I may have to get out of the screen share to do that. I think I am. Stop sharing to do that. Oh, chat window. Okay. All right. Dictionary root words sometimes is available as a Kindle book for only a few dollars. Okay. Steve said that, I guess. Yeah, good. If you like that kind of thing. It's blue. And Jackie says, is blue cohosh in the rhizome with roots category? Short answer is I don't know, Jackie. Now, the thing about it, is technically speaking, rhizome is below the ground. And the question would be, how do we know a rhizome is not a root? Well, a rhizome would produce buds where a root would not. And that's how we'd know. But so other than reading the description, I don't, short answers, I don't know.
Hey, thanks, Bobby.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see, that's that. Those were the only two I saw there, right? Okay. Now let's, I'm going to do something. Actually, Steve knows, and most of you probably know how to do what I'm doing now. The way to navigate around the screen, instead of going down and hitting the taskbar or whatever that bar at the bottom of the screen is called, is to hit Alt Tab. Alt Tab, I'm going to get rid of this because we dealt with it already. And now that leaves me with, actually, we're through with that PowerPoint. Get rid of that. Actually, no, I need it because I'm going to refer in review here. Let's see. All right, this is what I got from y'all, and I've added one term that I thought a shortchanged. Review primary versus secondary growth. One person wanted review primary versus secondary growth and the tissues where each occurs. And I thought the best way to do that might be to go to slide 34 in this set. I'm not sure I'm going to do a full, let's see, slide, what did I say, 74? 74, okay.
Yeah.
This is like 356 slides. We're about halfway through the program, but 74, okay. All right, there it is, the concept. You remember that, some of you do. I think I could blow it up. That might help. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I'm not sharing the screen though. I guess I better get back to the screen share. Oh. I'm still not very good at navigating this. All right, let's get it back. Oh, y'all aren't seeing anything because I wasn't sharing the screen. I'm sorry. Anyway, I was trying to show you how I was navigating like this by hitting Alt Tab. And now I've realized I wasn't. Okay, now, oh gosh, we go back. I thought I had go back. Okay, now 74 again.
Oh, wow.
Okay, here it is. Now we're back to what I should have been doing, and I probably should minimize this. Okay, yeah. Now, trying to distinguish between primary and secondary growth and its derivatives. All right, primary growth comes from the apical meristem. All right, and it has the three meristematic tissues. Meristem is kind of like a stem cell. It can do a lot. It's all powerful. It can do a lot of, it can regenerate a whole organism from it. Now, oops, let me get back up to, I got to do that. Annotate and spotlight. There we go. Now, all right. The three primary meristems that come from the tip of the stem and the tip of the root, the shoot and root, are the three primary meristems are the protoderm that gives rise to dermis, epidermis, the ground meristem that gives rise to pith tissue and cortical tissues. Those are regions, and that's like collenchyma, parenchyma, sclerenchyma are the main ones there. And then the third primary meristematic tissue or meristem is the procambium. These are the products of the apical meristem. And of course, that forms a vascular skeleton or vascular tissue, which are xylem and phloem are the main types of tissues, and they're both considered complex tissues because they compose of more than one kind of cell. Now, having said that, the apical meristem also produces, well, it's got cambium here, but the apical meristem produces not only the procambium, but it will produce the vascular cambium too. And the vascular cambium, well, the apical meristem is responsible for the growth in length, and the lateral meristems, of which there's a vascular cambium, and the other one that's not on this diagram is a cork cambium, also known as the phellogen, Phellogen, phellogen. Cork cambium is the same as phellogen. They both are responsible for increases in GIRTH, in girth. What makes wood is vascular cambium. And of course, the inner bark of the phloem, it goes along with it on the outside of the vascular cambium. Now, the vascular cambium has to increase in girth by something called anticlinal divisions and by increases inside and outside called periclinal divisions. Now, there is one handout or something that I gave you way back when that talks about that up, but that's not a concept that's all that important. It's just how the vascular cambium stays continuous while it gives rise to xylem inside and phloem outside. But now, and then the final question that I might try to answer here is, where does the cork cambium come from? It comes from the cortical tissue of the ground meristem. That's still, some of it's still meristematic. That still basically you got parenchyma, sclerenchyma, collenchyma, and collenchyma has thickened corners, but they say it's still functionally alive, whereas sclerenchyma is functionally as it's dead. So I think and I'm not trying to keep secret who asked that question, but if that person wants to say I've answered it or not, let me know, but I think I have. I hope I have. All right, now I've got their kind of cover blocked here, but all right, now this came up too, Brax Green. Actually, if I didn't answer the question, just email me and I'll deal with you individually about it. That might be the best way. Not that the person probably doesn't give a rip where I'm mentioning their name or not, but not everybody submitted everything, but that's okay. And that doesn't necessarily mean you know everything, but you might not know enough to ask. So, but anyway, we won't go there. All right, bracts, green ones. A bract is a leaf-like structure associated with a flower. Now, they don't have to be green, but like dogwood has so-called, I hate that term, flowering dogwood. The implication is the others don't flower. The other species don't flower. They do. But the bracts are associated with a cluster of flowers in the so-called flowering dogwood are just that. They're bracts. They're leaf-like structures that are associated with not only a flower, but the inflorescence. In the sunflower family, filaries, that's a special term for the bracts in the involucre, which is a collective term for the outer calyx or epicalyx. The term epicalyx is a term that gets used often in the mallow family. The mallow family is known, almost all the genera in that family have an additional outer calyx that they label epicalyx. Epi means on top of, and that's or in this more outer than on top of, but the bottom line is there's two green whorls. One of them is the calyx and the other is labeled the epicalyx or outer calyx. And that's, I don't think the term gets used, epicalyx gets used much outside of the mallow family, but it could. In the case of the sunflower family, you're dealing with a whole head of filaries. It's also labeled as an involucre, but not called epicalyx. Poinsettia has red or whitish bracts, but they're more often than not, they're green. All right, I think I've dealt with that. And if that person is not satisfied, they can email me too or say something now.
Thank you.
All right, that was Stevie Wonder. He's a genius. When he's helped me out with the computer so many times, I can't even begin to thank him. But Johnny on the spot always. A comparison of root and stem apical meristem. Start with slide 77, then go to slide 80. That's what I'm going to do. And then before I'm done with that, if the person don't let me forget, I'm going to try to tell you there's a comparison I can make about lateral branches in the stem versus the source of lateral. Well, let me go ahead and say it. In the stem, lateral branches come directly from the apical meristem, as I'm about to point out. But the lateral roots don't come from the apical meristem of the root. They come from the pericycle. Now let me start with slide 77 and then move on to 80. Well, actually, that's interesting. I've got okay, now I'm gonna have to back out of this to do it. And I actually probably have, okay, good. All right, 77, that's what I said. So let's go there. Actually, it'd be easier just to bang, bang, bang. All right, now, okay, y'all can still see this. All right, this is a little schematic showing the apical meristem of the shoot or stem. And this is the drawing showing the apical meristem of the root. Actually, when I'm very near the end here talking about my topic, I'm going to talk about indeterminate growth in an inflorescence context. But this is vegetative indeterminate growth. This apical meristem will grow indefinitely, and so will this of the stem indefinitely, as opposed to animals that are finite, determinate. Theoretically, a plant meristem could grow forever when animals tend to die. But some, of course, annuals die, but some perennials live indefinitely, I mean, thousands of years, but because of the apical meristem activity. All right, now we're going to look at, I think this is 77. We're going to move on toward 80. This is it. Okay, now, all right, this is looking at the same thing in slide form. Actually, slide form here and still a drawing here. And by the way, the root apex has something that the stem apex doesn't have or nor need, and it's called the root cap. The root cap is something that even aquatics tend to still have, vestigial, I guess, but they have a root cap that protects them when they burrow through the soil. Protects this growth region called the apical meristem. And behind the apical meristem is a region of elongation, and that's more obvious on the root than it is on the stem. You can start seeing it a little bit here. The region of differentiation is where you start seeing cells grow up into whatever they're going to be, like root hairs or xylem cells or some other cells. And over here, you can see this strand of xylem tissue already, the procambium. And the procambium is going to form the xylem and phloem. And that's when a cell differentiates. When the cell differentiates and differentiates far enough, it is frozen into that phase and won't reverse and is no longer totipotent. These parenchyma cells are totipotent, that they can continue to do something, differentiate. If they don't do storage or some other function, they can form other cells. But there's no root cap up here, but there doesn't really need to be. These young leaves, or leaf primordia, are protecting that apical meristem. And by the way, these are the lateral buds that form lateral branches, and you can see them down here. Okay, so I think I've answered that question. I hope that was all right. Okay, and I'll talk more about indeterminate, determinate growth in a minute. I'm going to get to what slide. Okay, that's that. I was talking about it up here in the stem context and root context right here in this one, but I'm going to mention it again when I talk about inflorescences, which is now. I hope you all saw the YouTube video of the tomato plant I sent you. It had elongating due to cell division, but mostly it was elongation cells in the region of elongation. And that just happened to incidentally be on a news feed that I get once every day. But I thought it was nice enough to send, and some of you told me you enjoyed it. So I hope you all got to see it, because it's a good example of what's going on right here as the plant elongates, mostly elongation and some cell division. Now let's, all right, I'm going to this, I figure I kind of shortchanged the topic of the inflorescences, and I think it's way down to around slide 157. Let's get there and see if we can, I guess I'm gonna have to do it. Actually, yeah, we'll go here, this slide, and we'll look at this slide, and we'll look at this slide. Whoa, I didn't want to do that. Gee, this thing's so sensitive. All right, let me undo that so I won't have a problem later on. All right, we're going to talk about inflorescences, which is slide 156, 157. Now, I kind of skipped over it, and I did refer you to Harris and Harris, and I think it was back in the back here. Okay, yeah, I referred you to 175 as a key. And in the key, they talk, there's different ways to they have a synoptic key, which is an outline key, which helps you to understand some of the difficulties. Now, I mentioned when you deal with plants, inflorescences are a difficult concept, and fruit is a difficult concept. Fruit is not as, well, we're not going to talk about fruit now unless you have questions about it, but I kind of glossed over it too, because it's a rather complex topic in itself. And the best way to learn the fruits and inflorescence types is by keying plants out. And there are some inflorescences that I have trouble figuring out what they are, but some of them are not. I'm looking at the key, and nowhere does it talk about something that I'm about to mention now. This right here is a topic. Some of the ones on the preceding page, like a raceme, have indeterminate growth. Like, where's the raceme? Don't tell me it's, oh, there it is, the top. Okay, that raceme, okay. Whereas others, like the cyme, have a determinate growth. Cymose, racemose. Now, what that means is that, and let me show you a real world example of a cyme. This is Hypericum cystifolium, and it's not the best, it's a little bit out of focus. but this is a fruit that was a flower. So that obviously is the oldest of the flowers.
Huh.
And whereas these are younger. Okay, now that is the same concept I have right here. Okay, that the oldest flower, actually what's happened is the difference is these two laterals have not done their thing yet because that's going to go up here like on the slide I just showed you. And this one's going to go up here. And this older flower in the center is going to be at the bottom, which is, excuse me, is going on here. So in the drawing, these haven't elongated yet. Okay, in this drawing, these have the lateral buds, which are reproductive buds in this case, haven't elongated yet. Now, that's interesting because I just got through talking about vegetative buds, flowers, and stems and leaves. Now I'm talking about reproductive buds. But the concept of indeterminate is like indefinite. The concept of determinate is like finite. Definite. So think of it that way. So the concept of determinate and indeterminate are the main reason I'm doing this, because I shortchanged those terms when I did this topic. But now, before I drop this subject, some inflorescences like the, where is it? The thirst, THYRSE, which is this one.
Whoa.
Okay, now thirst, you might find in some, I think mint family may have some of these. I believe that's where you would find them. Now, this slide tells you that, well, it doesn't tell you. I thought it did. Okay, it does. Well, here. All right. A thirst is a panicle-like inflorescence with indeterminate main axis, it's racemose, and indeterminate cymose subaxes. Okay, now, you go back later and look at the slide, you probably don't have it handy right now. Let's see if I can make it. Well, it is big already. It's big as it's going to, I can make it bigger. Oh, all right, all right. I don't want to make it that big. Why is it doing that? I just want to, it's not going to let me, okay,
Whoa.
now. Okay, now let me see if I can, I kind of overdid it. Whoa, whoa. All right, here's what I wanted to, well, crap. All right, I got it way overdone here. This is what happens when you have such an active, okay, good. And I'm back down to smaller. Whoa, see, Steve knows what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with an overactive mouse pad. There's not much to do. It's a Dell from hell problem. Let's see. Okay, well, actually,
That's good.
what this does is number the flowers so you can tell the age. And see, the time is number 1 down here. It's determinate. There's an indeterminate because it keeps growing up, up, up. All right. So this is what I'm just trying to do. I was trying to carefully enlarge just a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to get away with it, I think. Oh, no, I guess I'm not. Okay, here it is. Well, panicle-like primary axis right here is what this is. See, this is an enlargement of what's really going on. A thirst is a panicle-like inflorescence, which means that the primary axis is indeterminate. It keeps getting longer and it eventually quits. But these sub-axes, the side ones, are basically miniatures of this cyme. In fact, look at that. And look at that. You see, that is the same as a dichotomous cyme. So a thirst is a very complicated inflorescence because it has both a determinate and indeterminate component, but most inflorescences have one or the other. Okay, we did just a little over an hour all total, and not that I was worried about that much, but I'm happy to say, let me see if I've through sharing. I think I've shared. Oh, okay. The only other thing that I was going to mention is throw it in is, remember we use the terms monoecious and dioecious, cynoecious. Cynoecious is a norm. That's what most plants have, everything in one flower on one plant. But which one would this Sagittaria be? Anybody know? Well, it's a little hard. The male flower still has the petals. These are the stamens. The female flowers have lost everything, the petals, and the sepals are probably buried under there. We just can't see them. This is what the product of the ovary. This is the ovary, the product of the female flower. So they're both on the same plant, but they're on different branches. That means they would be what? Like oak trees.
Mm-hmm.
Monoecious. One house, but 2 bedrooms, so to speak. Whereas the hollies are dioecious, separate. We saw yesterday male trees, pollen-bearing trees, and ovary-bearing trees. Okay, all right. That's a fairly difficult concept. Let me close that. Close that and stop the screen sharing. Let me close that. Close that. And now let's see if I can stop the screen sharing. Uh-oh, bring myself back up here. Grid got people back. I'm still not good at navigating this thing. Oh crap, let's see. All right, that's probably John Califorski. I can't help him now though. Annotation tools, okay, close that. Oh, stop screen share. Here we go. Very good. All right. I hope you got something out of that. And next, sometime this week, I'll be sending you the whatever increment will be the first increment of plant physiology slides. All right. Any questions? Okay. I hope that met your approval as best I could do on a melancholy day for me for some reason.
Thanks,
But
Bobby.
all right. All right, I'm going to end it.
Whoa, whoa.
Have a good day.
All right, y'all
Yeah.
too. Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks, Bobby.
Bobby.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Y'all all are good troopers. I'm telling you to put up with this. All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.